What's up, ProGuides fam? My name is Stray, and today we'll be taking a look at crouch spraying versus the regular stand and spray. In the comments under some of our recent videos where we recommended crouch spraying, we've seen that there was a lot of confusion about crouch spraying and if it's either a good or bad habit. So we thought we'd go over it today so that you know why, how, and when you should be crouch spraying or spraying normally. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it.
In CSGO, there's of course two main ways of spraying. That's either standing or crouching. The first one we'll be looking over is the crouch spray. The crouch spray is something we've recommended in the past, so now we'll be looking at why we did that, in what situations, and where its limitations lie. The first and perhaps main reason why we would recommend crouch spraying is because it makes spraying significantly easier. When spraying with most guns, but especially the AK and M4A4, the vertical recoil is quite hefty and can be quite difficult to control. In order to get all your bullets in a small and tight pack, you'll need to pull down your mouse quite a lot. Now, this might sound easy on paper, but in reality, in an in-game scenario, it can be actually quite difficult, especially if you try to transfer your spray to multiple targets. If you crouch after you initialize your spray though, it will pull your spray down for you, meaning you'll have to pull down significantly less yourself so that you can instead focus on other things like your teammates screaming at you and where your opponent's head is. Again, it might not sound like a big deal, but it really is. And crouching after you fire your first few bullets will make your spray a whole lot easier to control. After all, by doing that tiny crouch movement, you'll only really have to worry about half the spray pattern, namely the horizontal pattern and not the vertical one. Before we continue with the second advantage, it's of course time for our question of the day. And today's fitting question is, do you use crouch spraying often? I personally do use it quite a lot, but I do try to be intelligent with that. More about that later. But what about you? Are you a big fan of crouch spraying, or do you try to avoid it? Make sure to let me know in the comments, and perhaps comment again if you plan on changing your ways after watching the entire video. This could be a really interesting experiment, so make sure you participate. For our second advantage, on top of the fact that it makes controlling your spray easier, it also has the added bonus of moving your head during your engagements, and by quite a bit at that. For your opponents, it will be difficult to headshot you because at first, when you get spotted, your head will be at head level, but as soon as you fire a few bullets, your head will actually move downwards and your opponent will have to readjust their aim. Even though this might take a split second and might not seem like a big deal, if you're an experienced CS player, then you'll know anything matters. If only you were able to aim an eighth of a second faster, so 125 milliseconds, you'll for one win significantly more fights, and because of that, you'll be able to live longer and get into more duels, which you have again a higher chance of winning. The point we're trying to get across here is that even though your opponent might only take a seemingly negligible amount of time adjusting their crosshair to hit your now newly positioned head hitbox, you can probably imagine how impactful that really is and how much duels that will cause you to win extra, and how many rounds those extra won duels translate in, and then how many extra competitive wins those extra rounds contribute to, etc, etc, etc. You get the picture. Even though it might seem little and irrelevant when you think of it as milliseconds extra in a duel, but when you look at the bigger picture and think about how many extra even games you can win due to those simple milliseconds, it starts to become a really big deal. There's more though. On top of it making you harder to hit and making your spray easier to land, it also improves your accuracy. When crouching with all the guns in the game, you'll be more accurate than you are while standing, so if you're crouch spraying, it will do the same thing. Sure, the extra accuracy isn't massive, and your recoil control is a lot more likely to make a difference than the extra accuracy, but you know the drill by now. It can give you the edge in some extra duels and make you win them because of it. And by now you hopefully know what we think of winning an extra duel here and there. That's right, it's a really big and potential game-winning deal. Now for the final advantage that crouch spraying gives, we have that allows you to move even when spraying. We all know the basics of Counter-Strike, right? Moving and shooting at the same time is a big no-no because it ultimately means that your shots will be very inaccurate, and hoping to hit a shot will be about as hopeless as buying a lottery ticket, and the chances of winning while doing it are very similar as well. Because of this, the moment we started playing, we all learned that we shouldn't move while shooting, and definitely not while spraying. The thing about crouch spraying though is that you can actually move, and it's even advised to do so. If you move while crouching, you'll be equally accurate as you are when standing still, and that makes you a whole lot harder to hit. The ideal way to crouch spray is therefore to do it while moving. One thing to keep in mind though when you do is that you can't really switch in one direction you're going, as when you're crouching, it takes a very long time to accelerate. So if you switch from going to the left to the right, for example, you'll essentially be standing still for the duration, which is exactly what we're trying to avoid doing. So yeah, choose which side you want to move towards and stick with it. So to summarize it, if you successfully crouch spray, you'll for 1 have an easier time controlling your recoil, 2, your shots will be more accurate, and 3, you'll be harder to hit both because your head will move down and also because your entire body will be moving sideways. All of this quickly added up will win you a whole lot of extra duels and win you many games, so that's why we really recommend it. There is of course people that criticize crouch spraying by saying that you are actually easier to hit and that people will accidentally headshot you instead, but people that do actually aim for the chest oftentimes actually lack the recoil control to compensate for their spray going up, which is why they do it in the first place. So as long as you don't crouch instantly and instead wait for your first bullets to come out like we told you, you'll actually be in an even better position because your opponent will be likely shooting over you. Besides, at the end of the day, if there's a lot of people that aim at chest level in your rank and you don't, you'll be the first person to rank right out of there as long as you don't join in on the bad habits at least. So now that we fully understand the crouch spray and all the advantages that it has, why would you ever want to do anything else? Why would you ever want to do a regular spray? Well, to answer that question, we'll also be listing some of the advantages of the regular spray, especially compared to the crouch spray. So let's start with the most obvious reason to go for a regular spray instead, and that is sometimes you simply have no option of going for a crouch spray, and you simply just have to go for a standing one instead. Not because someone told you it was a bad habit to crouch spray, but rather because the map simply won't allow you to. Not unless you want to be spraying at a wall instead of your enemies. But I'll assume that you want to win your games and not shoot at walls. I mean, that's why you're here, right? One example of this is if you're on the barrels on the B site overpass. If you're standing behind the barrels and you crouch, you can no longer see the enemies you're trying to shoot at, duh. And if you face head down, your opponents won't be able to see you either. So if you want to actually shoot at them from this position, your only option is to stand, and this is the case with all angles that give you a head glitch. Not only barrels on overpass, but the boxes in CT spawn on Dust 2 and the headshot angle next to Tetris on Mirage A site. If you do crouch in those positions, you'll simply be shooting at the wall, so your only option of course is to be standing instead. On top of the fact that it's not always possible to do a crouch spray though, there are also actually reasons to decide against it, even when you technically could, and that has to do with one major issue that the crouch spray has, and that's the fact that you're really committed to the duel when you do crouch. If you go for a crouch spray instead of a normal one, there's essentially no way that you can decide after a few shots that you're not going to win the duel and that you'd rather peace out. If you are crouched, in order for you to get away, you don't only need to quickly strafe behind a corner or a piece of cover, but you first need to uncrouch. And then and only then, you can start building momentum to start getting away. This simply takes too long and will get you killed 10 out of 10 times. If you're doing a standing spray instead of a crouching spray, you're not as committed to the fight and you could back out or choose to change up your shooting style. To give you some examples, when you're doing a standing spray, you can actually decide against it mid-duel and go for short bursts with movements in between them instead, which is especially handy if your opponent is further away than maybe you were initially expecting. Additionally, you can also decide to take cover if the fight is taking too long or isn't really going your way. You can also play a peek and unpeek angle, as that's much better to always have the surprise factor without running into the risk of fighting multiple opponents at once. And finally, it can just be a whole lot better to not lose speed during your fast entry route, for example. After all, if you're the first player in, the worst thing you can do is slow down and block the players behind you. The final advantage that the standing spray is, although this is something more advanced and is something we'd only recommend for players with really solid movement, is that it allows you to jiggle spray. In a recent videos of ours called 10 Insane Tips to Upgrade Your Rifle Game, which we recommend to watch as a complimentary video to this one, we also talked about this way of spraying, but it does require you to be standing. Basically, it's a tip from Coldzera, a pro player currently playing for FaZe Clan, and he talked about how he does a tiny bit of movement during his sprays. You might be thinking, wait, I thought we had to be standing still to be accurate unless you're crouched, and that is true, but you don't have to stand completely still. The movement inaccuracy only starts kicking in when you have a velocity above 30. Thus, if you move but stay under that key 30 velocity, you'll be able to move and shoot while staying completely accurate. By doing this, your hitbox will essentially be shaking, making you a harder target to hit without sacrificing accuracy. The reason we said it's an advanced tip though is because it's damn difficult to stay under that 30 velocity, and it truly requires some great counter-strafing skills and lots of practice. If you do manage to get it down like Coldzera has though, it is going to help you out a lot. So if you're a great player, perhaps already in Global Elite, and you are trying to reach the higher levels of Face It, this is really something I'd recommend you practicing. To do that, all you have to do is hop on to aim_bots and type in CL_showPOS1 into the console. Now you'll see on the top left what your velocity is, and with that you can experiment with spraying and moving, keeping it below that 30 velocity threshold.
Well guys, that's gonna be all for today. If you did enjoy, make sure you leave a like, subscribe, and also hit that notification bell. We really appreciate your support, and we also love reading the comments, so make sure you don't forget to answer today's question of the day. And while you're at it, why don't you guys head over to ProGuides.com, where you will be able to find some of our top ranked coaches that will definitely help you find and fix your mistakes and help you rank up. And even on top of that, we also partner up with the Navi star Simple himself to get you guys a great course. So make sure you guys check that out too. Again, ProGuides.com. With that said, I wish you a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Peace out, guys.